Okay, roll call.
Chris,
Here.
Richard,
Here.
Dave,
Here.
Otis,
Here.
Tom,
Yes.
Yancy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Does anybody have any amendments to the previous meeting's minutes? If not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as they stand?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any amendments to today's agenda? I've got from Liz here, we're going to, this DOT letter, we're going to talk about staff reports. And we need to schedule a meeting with the Harbor Board. We'll do that under discussion. And U.S. Forest Service plan discussion. Anything else? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I shall move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on do we have a motion to open the public hearing for the Petersburg Borough Comprehensive Plan and the Comprehensive Plan Executive Summary?
So motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, at this time, we'll open the public hearing on the comprehensive plan. Do we have anyone here who wishes to comment from the public on the comprehensive plan? Any discussion from the commission members? Yes. Otis.
Well, I brought the book you sent me. I guess one thing I am a little concerned about is the zoning things. I guess I think zoning is important, but I also think the city made a promise that they wouldn't zone where the land is owned. Well, outside of the city. I don't know if it's possible to have zoning on the land that is not yet in private ownership.
Well, I think all this is a report saying this is what we see as potential, the way the property is being used right now. It's not zoning. So what this is just kind of like this is the way we see property being used right now. You know, in the future, it's going to have to go through a whole procedure, including a lot of public comment and hearings and everything else before that can be made into zoning. So it's not saying that there's going to be any regulation at this time.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah. So.
I'm going to take exception to what Otis says because I have a parcel that's a remote parcel that, or two of them that I actually lived on for over 30 years and then another one. And I was heavily involved with the whole process of formation of the borough. And there was no implicit promise that I found anywhere by any city official in the entire process that the property would never be zoned at any point in the future. I think what they said was the intent was they were not going to zone immediately. That was the intent of this document. I don't think that we can have property in the borough that's unzoned. We can, I think, per state statute, we can determine the property to be rural residential, or I don't know, Liz, you're more familiar with the statutes than I am. But we can't just say there's no zoning there. And I think the whole purpose of the formation of the borough was to determine the land status. Now, that's not to say that I'm supporting the planning commission or this future or any future councils going in there and immediately putting zoning restrictions on it, and that's not what I read in the comprehensive plan. I read in the comprehensive plan that that is one of the functions of a borough, and at some point in the future they retain that option. And so I don't see it as, I mean, I'd rather see it more personally, I'd rather see it more specific. I'd rather have seen this document actually gone that step and actually gone into the property, out the road, and remotely, and said, okay, this is rural residential, this is industrial, and not gone in there and said to anybody out there, okay, you can't do this anymore because we're a borough now, but at least go in there and say, okay, you're using this as an industrial piece of property, you're grandfathered in for industrial piece of property. But the problem that I see going forward in the borough is that as more people move in out there, invariably there's going to be conflicts on land use out there. There's multi-$1,000 homes that are being built out there right now, and I guarantee you somebody at some point in the future is not going to want somebody to put in a wrecking yard right next door to them. So this will be the gift that will keep on giving unless at some point we realize that it is a city out there, it is a rural residential area out there, and it's, I think we just got to be prepared for it.
But by borough charter, it states that zoning is done through service areas.
Correct.
And so the people out there have to form a service area,
It,
at least that's the way I read
it talks about in there the encouragement to form service areas.
Right.
Which would handle the zoning in those.
So,
I was just gonna say, as I understand it, the borough has the authority, planning authority and land use authority to do land use outside of Service Area 1 under state statute. The charter says, yeah, you know, we think it should be done this way under service areas. So I think it's two different things. I don't think it limits the borough's authority, but it does suggest that it should be done in this way under the charter.
so
That's what the attorney
I
said.
think what the whole idea is, though, is the people out there will have plenty of time to comment on whether or not they want zoning. And and if you don't have to zone everything outside of Service Area 1, a group of people in one area out there can say, we want zoning in this area, and, you know, move forward in that direction. I don't think it has to be done as the whole of the area outside of Service Area 1 at once.
No, that wasn't the intent of
Yeah.
of what I was
Yeah.
saying. I was just saying that sooner or later this will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go, if you look at anywhere else in the state where this has happened, where there's been no zoning, there's been no regulations, sooner or later, you know, and I could be wrong, you know, we could be, you know, I know Petersburg is unique in a lot of ways, but it's just, anytime you get a concentration of people together, you got different people that have different ideas on, you know, what their neighbors should be doing and not doing, and that's the purpose for zoning. And, you know, I would have been perfectly happy if the city had not incorporated and formed a borough, and they wouldn't have to be dealing with this. But since they took that task on and wanted to form a borough, then this is just one of the headaches they're going to have to deal with going forward in the future. And nobody likes to have somebody come down and tell them that they can do something and they can't do something. And by no means do I think that any time in the immediate future we're going to have zoning similar to that we have in Service Area 1. I don't think anybody, that was their intent. But I think what the consultants did was they did a very good job in saying, okay, out here in this area, people are living here. Out here in this area, somebody's got a sawmill. Out here in this area, we have a gun range. You know, so they have identified the current uses for these individual areas. And the language that I read it in there, they weren't giving specific zoning recommendations and saying that we should do this. And I think it's basically what I see this document as is just a template for somebody like Liz or Joe, or they're more than likely, because they're probably going to be long gone by the time this actually starts happening, or they might hope they will be. But you know, so I see it as a document that's looking towards down the road. How far down the road, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think if people in an area out there, if they get together and they want to have area zoned, it's a good deal. If they don't, if they just want to say we want to have it all zoned industrial, and that's, you know, and anything goes, and that's how it works. But the mechanism's there for people to do that if they want to do it or if they don't want to do it.
Well, and I think that's kind of what this,
Yeah.
the gist of the document
Yeah.
is try to provide a roadmap that can be worked with in the future. But to not tie anybody into anything at this time. So I kind of hope that's what everybody feels about it.
I think it sets the stage for
Yeah.
the conversations that you need
Right,
to have.
right.
If people want to go in that direction.
Yeah. Tom?
I'd make a comment here. The only thing one thing that bothers me is that we haven't, there's a big lacking, I think, in this community, and we still have land that's selected. Maybe we have land that can be selected as some, but there's a big lack of land that could, for commercial development. If you want to go in business, you want to bring people into town, we don't have anything to offer. And I don't know how a community is going to get out and we're going to develop more unless we provide some place for a business or some land that's zoned right for businesses to expand. And we don't have that.
I think we can address that through
Yeah.
actual zoning, and if you're talking specifically about service
I
area
think
one,
it's important
I
that
think
we
we can look
do
at that.
identify some areas that people could put in businesses.
and I think we're gonna, as part of this process, look at least service area one zoning again and probably adjust.
And it would be nice if it was nearer that could adjoin service area one, find some places that could be developed, or whether the community does it, or the individual does it, or a developer does it, but make something available for commercial development.
Well, I've talked to a few people in the community who said that they own some big chunks of property in the community, and how they choose to proceed with what they're going to do with that property was kind of waiting to see what the comprehensive plan had to say, and to say about what our inventory is of residential property and commercial property and industrial property, to decide which way they would want to go when they develop that property. Because they said, we don't really know what the needs are in the community, and that's kind of what this document is supposed to help people
Right.
be able to understand.
Right.
Because then, if somebody has a big chunk of property, they can go to the borough and say, I'd like to split it up into these lots and have them zoned this way. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to make available to people. So, am I correct, Liz?
Yeah, no, I think I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Especially in service area one, where
Yeah.
it makes a difference. Outside of service area one, it's
Yeah,
Yes.
if it isn't too far
doesn't.
out, businesses could develop
Well-
and help the economy.
There are a lot of big chunks of property in service area one that people could subdivide and do
There's a
various
few.
things
Yeah.
with. And so, it's just kind of a question of, what the need is. And I think this document will help them decide what they want to do with their property.
Isn't part of the
So-
problem that the city quit building roads on their property, and now you gotta do a lot of developing before you can use it? I think that's part of the problem.
That's part of the thing, and it's I think
expensive.
if there's a standard though, and there's a need, it makes it worthwhile for somebody to put the roads in to be able to sell the lots, but they've got to know what the need is in the community, because why spend the money on infrastructure if you aren't going to be able to sell the lots?
Because it's owned
So,
wrong.
yeah. So, so if we know that there's a shortage of commercial property, it makes it worthwhile for them to create a few commercial lots, put the infrastructure in, and they can sell those lots. If there's not a shortage, then it doesn't make sense to do it. So, Dave?
I think the main thing that I took away from that document was there wasn't enough, maybe not enough, there wasn't enough property available for multi-home, or what do they call it?
Multifamily.
Multifamily housing. And that seemed to be in our housing inventory, the one thing that we were lacking. And I think that's something that we should definitely address on this commission level at some point in the future, to try and identify areas that are close very close to town.
I
that we
think
could- I
the
think
biggest thing we noted in there was the fact that a lot of the multifamily housing, what is in good quality is full.
Right,
And the stuff that is available is not in the best
right.
condition.
I think that's kind of across the board on,
Yeah.
on residential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
then-
it's pretty much, when you get to that lower end, inexpensive rentals and that sort of thing, the condition is the biggest issue.
And I think the other issue is, I think keeps coming up all the time in town here is, people need a place to store fishing gear.
Yeah.
They need to have a place where they can build net sheds. I mean, it's a fishing community. I think there needs to be, that seems to be another area that's been identified, and we've dealt with that issue many times, and people wanting to do that on residential lots, and it seems to be increasingly causing friction in, amongst neighbors and neighborhoods. And I think maybe we even need, I don't even know if we need a separate zoning classification. It doesn't have to be industrial. It can be just C1, and you can have net sheds and pot storage independently, or how does that?
Yeah, you can store.
In
I
C1?
thought was it C2? What was the store or
C2.
the warehousing is C2?
Yeah.
Right, so we need to, I think in our looking at this, we need to look at areas in town that we could possibly identify with, with consultation with, people in the community where it'd be a good spot. And it's definitely needed, and I think we'd eliminate a lot of the problems that we've been having, with these issues and, people wanting to put this in residential areas. If we had special areas said, okay, we're going to try and work with a local developer, we're going to make this area specifically be for pot storage, net storage, a whole full range of activities like
You
that.
could lease it like like the harbor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be another possibility.
It could be a lease ground, or it could be a place where somebody can buy lots that are specifically zoned for warehousing purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, any number of deals. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going through the process right now, selecting property from the state right now. That'd be, possibly some of that property might be available. There's any number of options, but I think those are the two things that I took away that we need to have more
Yeah.
of in Service Area 1.
Yeah.
Or get back to this commercial area of land. I don't know that we would need, if the borough made available land that was classified for commercial development, then an individual could get his Corps of Engineers permit and everything, buy a lot from the borough or whatever, if it's borough land, and be approved, and when he makes his permits out, it'll all be approved, but he would be actually the developer. We don't have to find a developer to make 50 lots available. Just make the land so somebody could purchase that amount of land, and that would save all this financial upfront money it would take to make that available.
But I think we can also, by stating there's a need in that area, which we seem to be discussing, that maybe somebody who has private property is willing to spend the money to put in that infrastructure and subdivide it to
Right.
sell the lots. So
Right.
that way the borough has no expense in this thing.
That's
It's
right.
just assisting somebody who owns private property in developing.
Right,
in
they
their
could buy,
nature.
a developer could buy 5 lots from the borough and develop them.
So,
Or like you say, there's already lands that are say,
Right.
or zoned residential, have no development on them, that could be rezoned.
And there's some land that's just not zoned, just kind of pending.
Just pending.
yeah.
Yeah, that's unzoned, pending future classification, and
I think
can
it's
move
an
it
area
into-
that needs
Yeah,
to be
into
looked
those.
at.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting off topic, but you were stating about some of the lands we can choose now. Are there any lands available close by that would work for storage or that kind of thing?
Not too much.
Not too much. I mean, I looked at the inventory yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to have to store our gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
If you wanna go store it
I
out,
inquired about some commercial land where I could develop, and the only 2 that I could You know, at Dr. Kuhn's office, I don't know, those two houses that are falling down up there on the side of the hill, just up from where Dr.
yeah.
Kuhn's office was.
Oh, yeah.
Those are commercially zoned, and that's all I could find that's available. Now, what kind of a business could you put in there when the street's closed in the wintertime? Because you can't, it isn't sanded, and they close the street because it's too steep.
Gotta go down another way.
And that's all I could find in town for commercial land.
Isn't that commercial across from the hospital, that the houses are for sale?
Yeah, that's what he
Yeah,
says.
there is now.
Also, right here by Mill Slough, that
Yeah.
whole stretch between Mill Slough and,
Yeah,
that's all commercial as well.
yeah.
Also at Singley Alley, there's a house
But it
for
was
sale that's
very,
commercial.
when I
There's a
inquired,
few
that was
places.
the answer I got, was that it's really limited.
We have someone in the audience here who'd like to comment, so, yeah.
Just listening to everybody, it seems that everybody's in agreement with there needs to be more available land usage, whether it be commercial, industrial, single-family residential, multifamily. The only thing I've seen in certain areas that I would just want to reiterate is that you don't mix those zonings into one area. Have a large tract of land that designated as single-family residential or as commercial, because like was said earlier, you're just gonna have that butting of heads of, you know, people wanna have their kids out playing in the street, and next door someone wants to be welding, and not at a hobby rate, but as a commercial business. That's two different things. So I think it just causes a lot of friction and a lot of heartache in the community between the residents, the business owners, the more stress on the police to then have to regulate it.
Well, what we want to try to do is make sure there's buffers as well between an industrial type use and a residential type use, so there's not a budding immediately like we have now where we've got industrial right against residential, because that's a real problem as we, as a commission, have seen quite a bit. So,
Especially it seems like the industrial setbacks are, you know, very minimal. So if they're right up against a residential area, then it's.
Dave.
I'd like to comment, the reason that happened was precisely what we're talking about in the comprehensive plan. Areas were zoned after the fact and not before the fact. And that's my only reason and my only observation on the comprehensive plan, and why I think it's important that we move forward is so that we don't avoid, that we can not have these problems, you know, 20, 30 years down the line. And that's why if we go in an area and say, you know, look, we've identified this area as an industrial use area, we've identified this area as a residential area, identified this strip along the road as a commercial area, then you avoid having the situations like you were talking about, where you have an industrial welding yard right next to a residential house. That's, to me, that's the reason for planning and zoning, and what that does is it protects everybody's property values. Protects the person that has an industrial lot from having complaints from the people next door to him that have a residential house that don't like the activities he's doing, and it also protects the people that have a residential house from having to deal with industrial activities happening right out their bedroom window. I mean, that's the whole purpose for all this.
And I would just add that I think it's going to be very important for the commission to be able to say no at times when someone wants to zone some of their own property in a way that would create those conflicts. So it's all well and good to say, come on in and we'll rezone property for you however you want. But if that's going to cause problems down the road, I think it's important for the commission to be willing to stand up and say, you know, we see this as a potential problem where we're going to have industrial against residential, and the answer is going to have to be no. You know, and I think that's important to keep in mind as we move along on this process, and hopefully that'll be few and far between. But I think it's important that we remember the conflicts and try to act accordingly as we move forward. I understand it's not easy, but I
can definitely see this document setting precedent. Like it talks about encouraging, the committee being fairly giving as far as reducing setbacks and stuff for increasing residential density and stuff. And so when you come in here asking for a variance and say, and you point to it in the document, it says, then kind of
Well, and I think we
almost
need to-
know
we
the
need-
outcome.
We need to make sure, though, that where we are doing that is an area of town where we want to promote the higher density, that's going to allow, whereas there are other areas where it doesn't make sense to do setback reductions. Like, when you start looking at larger lot sizes, say out in the rural areas, why do you need to go into a setback? Why do we need to
Yeah.
give you a variance on a setback? Because that's just going to create future problems. So,
Most of you weren't here. The setbacks, at least in the residential areas, are, well, the fire marshal was very adamant that we need 30 feet so you can get a truck between houses, and so on. That was, so this would kind of go against what the fire marshal is concerned with. I think building these little houses,
I would say,
setbacks.
I would say no. I think what we're looking at is if you have room on your lot to, build a second small house and still maintain the setbacks, and I don't think, what we're saying
Yeah,
is
there's a
go
problem.
for it,
Yeah.
Because right
Yeah.
now it's against code to do that,
Oh, dear.
even if you have the room. Yeah,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
is. So I
You
think
can have a
what,
greenhouse, that.
yeah, but not a dwelling.
you can have a dwelling.
You can't have two dwellings. Yeah. So I think what they're trying to say is if the space is there and you're going to allow, and it's going to be safe and you're going to be able to meet fire codes and allow for the setbacks, then, go for it. And that increases, density in certain areas. But no, I don't think we would be recommending that we do it, and throw out the
Yeah, I
the
don't
fire
either.
code requirements.
No.
That's not what we would be saying.
any additional discussion, guys? Anybody else have any comments? I guess if not, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a
I shall
motion.
move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any visitors' views related to agenda items? Do we have any visitors' views unrelated to agenda items? Okay, on to report of staff members. Liz is going to fill us in on this DOT letter that we were all handed out.
Talks about maps that aren't attached to it.
Well, it does have attachments. I just printed off the offer letter. FAA has told the state that they don't have enough room set aside at the end of the runway, kind of on that corner of by Sandy Beach and Hagen Drive, across from the dog park, for their runway overshot area, I guess is one way to describe it. A few years ago, they purchased some land from the borough to create that area, but they didn't purchase enough, and so they need additional almost 3.5 acres, and they want an easement for that. They'd also like the borough to donate that property for that easement, because basically once we do that, it's no longer developable property. But I would suggest that we talk to them about maybe they have more land within that airport boundary than they really need, and maybe they would like to trade something
Yeah.
first.
3.5 acres for 10,000.
I would suggest that perhaps the state would be willing to trade, we'd be willing to trade the 3.39 acres for all the unattached state property within the current borough boundaries.
Well, it's going to be DOT. That's the agency where we can ask. It doesn't hurt.
3.39 acres for, what was it, what'd you say, 20,000 acres?
Yeah, 20,000
That'd be a
acres.
fair trade.
Yeah, nice try.
Nice try.
But certainly up by the airport would be some commercial.
I would
Land.
definitely say propose some sort of land swap
Yeah.
for that.
And I would say that the value, I don't know where they decided that the
Yeah.
value is under 10,000, since last time they
Yeah.
purchased land that wasn't even on the road, it was 56,000 for a smaller chunk of property in 2008. So I'm not sure where that determination came from. But
Wishful thinking.
I'd like
Yeah.
to buy that chunk for 10,000.
yeah.
Throw my fishing gear on.
Well, maybe that's a place to start.
Well, that actually probably would be a good place for fishing gear storage.
Yeah.
Liz, what do you think we should do?
Well, mostly I'm just letting you know about this, and I haven't had a chance to call these people, but I assume that since you're in charge of granting easements and making recommendations on land, I just wanted to run it by you, and, if anyone thinks we should just give it to them, accept their offer, that's one way to go, and another way is to have more of a conversation with them about what we think would be just compensation or fair compensation.
I think the land has value to the borough, and we should
Yeah.
get something in return for it.
Yeah.
So does having airplanes come in.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other side of it.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we propose that we exchange for that property that they need 3.39 acres on the other side of across from the terminal that's now currently state property,
What terminal?
the airport terminal.
Oh, the airport terminal.
Yeah, you know where the
Yeah,
road, where the
mhm,
airport
sure,
terminal
mhm.
goes? Well, on the other side of the street,
We
Yep.
need more
we need
parking.
more parking, and right now, to develop that parking, you'd have to go through the state and get a permit, which I imagine they'd give us, but maybe,
So maybe exchange it on condition
Well,
that we'd be willing to develop it.
The other
at some
potential
point
there,
for
I don't,
parking.
if we're talking 3.39 acres, that's a pretty good sized chunk of ground. You could even put in parking out front and put a row of businesses along the back.
Yes.
So, I mean, so that could be,
Commercial land.
and that could be
That's
commercial
land.
property that the borough could make available.
Right.
So it's something else to think about.
so maybe I'll just make a motion that we exchange them 3.39 acres for state property that's across the road from the airport terminal, immediately across that, and we just swap. Says it's pretty worthless. Well, I mean, it's, they want to,
Would you consider something besides that? I mean, I'm just saying you're just narrowing it to
That's
that.
our first choice.
That's the first choice, okay.
yeah, I would think that's
I would
their
just, I would
choice.
just say we go back to them and say we would like to see some sort of a land swap.
Sure.
And then
And then
we'll
hopefully-
start negotiation at that
Offer.
point.
Yeah, what do you have available?
Land
Yeah.
swap and then suggest that property
Yeah.
would
Okay.
would
Yeah.
be reasonable.
Okay,
And then details could be
Yeah.
worked out afterwards, but that would be some wonderful land
Yeah.
for the borough to make available for businesses too.
Yeah.
I would ask for
Go.
more.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I don't know if there'd
wouldn't
have
say
to be a
even
height
spin trade. I'd
requirement
ask for
that would
more.
interfere with
Let's bump it up to 5.
Yeah.
with that for the
Open
planes
secret.
or not. If you could put buildings on it or not, the land, but,
I think it's a good opportunity.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, the state I actually looked it's been over 10 years ago of developing some of that property. And it was a pretty daunting process to go through the state to do what they wanted to do. I mean, it was more than I had the resources or the ability to do, but I think that property has a lot of value to the community. I think it has a lot of value for the long-term development of the airport master plan, too. So I think it could be a win-win situation for the state and for the borough if we look at moving some of that property into
private.
borough ownership.
yeah, okay. All right, I'll ask and see
Yeah.
what,
How much acreage do they want at the end of the runway?
3.39.
3.39 acres.
So how much is that? Where does it go from and to?
An acre is about 100 feet square. A quarter of an acre is about 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, 400 by 400 an acre.
So from the end of the current runway or from the fence?
It's along Hagen Drive as it goes down toward
I can actually
Sandy
show you.
Beach.
Yeah, I understand exactly
Yeah.
where it is. And years ago, I didn't think that was the best place to put an airport in the first place. So I just want to know how far it's going to reach.
So it's like this little corner back here right along the road.
Yeah.
About 12 blocks.
Yeah, like right there.
Oh.
It's kind of this right here. Right here. So across from the dog park. They already have part of this lot here, half of this one, and so they want the one right
14
below
lots
it
or
too.
something like that.
Is it where the lights currently are and then just
You could
extending?
take and build.
It's,
a
you
big park.
know where the lights are
Across
at?
from the airport.
If you're driving out the road, it'd be on the right-hand side of the lights. So it'd be between the road and the lights.
Along
Be
the
great,
back of it, You know,
Right, like almost directly across from the dog park, kind of like
Yeah.
back up in there.
So it's a good piece of property.
Because that's road.
Yeah, it's got a road on it.
It's a lovely piece of.
Well, that's why I was saying.
Definitely
that's-
worth more than $10,000.
Well, I'm just saying, that's good for them, this is good for us. There's I don't know how big that one section is right there, but it's probably more than 3 acres, but it'd be really nice to get that entire chunk right there.
yeah.
So maybe we could offer them a little bit more, I mean, since the property's so cheap, you know, their valuation of it.
Right. Theirs is only worth like $15,000 then.
Well, if we're only valuing the property there on the road at $3,000 an acre, we offer to exchange them, and then we just had a few more acres at $3,000 and change an acre, and then we have a pretty good trade.
Worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good way to go. We should ask at least.
Yeah.
It's a big chunk of real estate inside that airport boundary.
Just do it.
I'll report back.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Okay, if there's
Next
nothing else,
meeting, we'll approve it.
if there's nothing else in reports, let's move on to unfinished business. We have a consideration for an application to vacate a pedestrian easement. Liz, do you want to give us a little background on this again, just to refresh everybody's memory?
Sure. So this was before you 2 meetings ago, and I think pretty much had everyone's approval. At the time, they were requesting vacation, on their application, vacation of the entire easement. During the testimony, there was discussion of, what the use would be, and, we talked about, I think the testimony was that immediately there would be an interest in using 5 feet of that easement. And then that ended up being the motion that got approved through the commission. And then subsequently to that, another conversation with the applicants, that they actually had wanted the entire 25 feet vacated. And so at the last meeting, we had a reconsideration of that action, and you agreed to reconsider it. Applicants are here this time, so you can ask any questions you'd like, and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what's going on. And there really wasn't any opposition from anyone. I think it was clear that there was alternatives fairly close by to get access to the beach, both north and south of that location. So I think that's about it.
I had a quick question, because I was reading through that. That gray stripe that goes right through the middle there, what is that? I couldn't read it on the...
This right here?
Yeah.
I think that's a section line easement, and
Has that been vacated?
I
or
think
is
it's
that-
been vacated.
Okay, that's
I'm
what
not
I wanted to
100%
know.
sure, honestly, but I think it
Yeah, I
was.
couldn't read it on the PDF
Yeah.
that I got, so it was like,
I'm pretty sure that's what that is.
It says
okay.
vacated there.
It
Does
does,
it?
okay.
Oh, good, I'm glad you have better eyesight.
Good eyes.
So,
There's still an easement along the beach that follows.
Yeah.
the
right on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess my only other question is, you were talking about there's an easement down there that follows along the creek. And this is a question, I guess, for Liz, is would there be an issue with, like, Corps of Engineers if the borough in the future were to want to build a trail down along that easement?
On that property is the problem with public access.
Well, for public access along the creek.
You mean the one over here
Yeah.
between
Down
lot
past
5
the
and
Right.
6?
box line.
Right, that's the nearest easement to access the beach. That's just what the concern I would have for Liz, is if the borough in the future decide they want to build a trail down there, would the Corps of Engineers give them too much grief on doing that?
I have a few answers to that, but
Yeah.
Who owns that property though, Liz?
I-
That the creek
that creek
easement is
easement,
on is, I guess, the question.
Maybe Jesse Weston who is along that easement.
On one side and then
I'm not sure.
old for farmhouse.
Because I don't know what the Corps would say on it. That was
Isn't
my
there another
concern.
easement north of you again, too?
Yeah.
Is, I'm not sure. I don't know if you have a thought on that. I don't want to give you bad information, so I honestly don't know.
Okay. I just was my question about it. Because I know they usually want you to stay at least 25 feet back from streams, and I don't know how wide that easement off that stream is. So,
It should say on the, if you have the key there, I don't know if it's legible with the Xerox copy, but it
I know,
tells
it's the
you
thing.
if you reference the curve and you reference that easement.
Just eyeballing, it looks like 50 feet, just because it looks pretty much like,
Yeah, because I think it's 25 feet from
You're
the center
25.
line of the creek
Yeah.
in
So I can
each
pull it up on
direction.
here
So a total
enough
of
that
50.
I can
yeah.
see it.
I mean, that's what it looks like to me, about 50, but,
If you reference these, then
Oh.
it'll reference
No, I can't read that.
That's the, yeah. 33, does it say 25 or 33 foot? I can't read it.
It's a multiple
Creek.
5.
Buffer, it looks
That's
like
gotta be
it
25
says.
then.
Yeah.
I think it's 25 on each side.
Yeah.
right? Yeah. The other one, I think, is probably the better one, which is the one, it's a state right-of-way, which,
Down along the section line there?
which is on the north, you don't see it on this
Oh,
map.
there's another one the other direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's a 50-foot wide.
Yeah, and then there's one
State right.
down here at this section line, isn't there? Down this direction. From the creek is.
From the creek.
Yeah, the creek is right there, and it's down, two
Right there.
lots down, there's another one, yeah. So,
Yeah, and that one there, you can probably access by that road
For
Yeah.
farm
and
is
then walk down.
that one?
and through one lot.
yeah.
This is the creek, right?
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's just concerned if there's enough easements within that area. I mean,
There's
we
like
don't
a,
wanna-
this road
Yeah.
going
We don't
like
want to
that.
limit future,
Yeah.
access.
That 50-foot wide one would be,
Yeah,
if
would be better.
any harbor development or anything happened on that beach part down there, that's plenty wide for traffic up and down too in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the sites they're considering for the road to Cake,
Hmm.
coming in at that 50 foot.
No. For the ferry.
I think it's the power line, isn't it?
Yeah, the power line crossing.
Power line.
One of the other things I think, is it Chris?
Mhm.
You were talking about earlier with the comprehensive plan that kind of relates to this is you're saying like, if you got a large tract of land, like in this case rural residential, when people hear that, they think that it's a large tract of land and therefore it has bigger setbacks. And that's the idea of rural residential is bigger, so I got 20-foot setback instead of in town, single family residential, I got 10-foot setback on my sidelines. But then this one, our lot that we're referring to here, it's the smallest of all those lots that's subdivided and actually doesn't even meet the requirements of rural residential. It's supposed to be a minimum of 200 feet road frontage, and it's like 175. Then on top of that, they picked that lot to put that 25-foot easement in, so then it just keeps squeezing it more and more. So what might seem like to the general public and people that don't know all the particularities of the lot, that you have a lot of room, but then you don't as you start to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you want to put in the on-site water
Yeah,
and everything else, you know.
And, I mean, before this was even brought up, I mean, we asked neighbors and stuff beforehand just to see if there was any, especially the adjoining neighbor there to the north. And they had no issues with it.
And I think also we heard testimony last time too, that there's this gray road actually goes all the way down to the beach. And even though it's
Yeah.
crossing private and then
It
federal
goes through the fur
property,
farm.
the fur farm, that's pretty much what everybody uses because it's easy,
It's easy.
yeah, as
Yeah.
opposed to traipsing through.
And I
Down
think
that
the
slope.
state owns that as well. The Forest Service operates it, but I
They
think it's the
own
state
the-
owns
the
it.
state owns the easement down to the
Well, they own
lower
the
lot.
property.
They own
Yeah,
that
but
lower
the
lot.
upper lot is a private lot.
Yes.
It's private.
But
yeah.
there's an easement for the state across it.
So I have a question. So if the state has an easement, does that mean it's public access then? Or it just means the state has
That I don't
access?
know. The
Okay.
state has access.
Depends on what the easement was, how it's described, whether it's a public access easement or utility easement or what it is. But I don't know, because it's not on this
It says
particular.
utility, private access and utility easement.
Oh, there it is, yeah. But the part that goes to the next lot, 5, is that same, does it squish down?
Well, isn't lot 5, the,
That's the
that's the fur farm.
farm, the
Because then it
state
says
property.
private sewer line easement on that lot 5 portion. So I guess that's
I
what
think
I'm,
that's the easement for the lot 4.
oh, okay.
Because lot 4 was the original house associated with that, but then that's been sold off to a private individual. I happen to know that individual, so I know a little bit about that property.
And that,
So-
that sewer line goes right underneath the fur farm.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that public access easement actually extends down to the beach or whether it's just right there, just to get you to that state lot. Seems like it's public to that lot, so then,
It says private access, isn't it?
just,
Public.
oh, thank you, private.
The road up on
I
the.
really
upper
need to
side.
get a magnifying glass.
Well, even in the printout, I think we need a better printout.
I think when he was
because
here
it's-
doing his public testimony, he said it was private. but
Okay.
Everybody goes down it.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care, but in the future, if
It
he
could be
sells that
somebody
lot,
else.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Somebody
And
else.
right now, the Forest Service is maintaining it.
Right. So, but,
So then technically
Yeah.
you would have to go to the stream easement,
yeah,
yeah. If you're,
that'd be the next nearest
right.
one. So, at least to the south. To the north, you said there's that other one that's not on this map.
And that's a state-owned right-of-way.
Yeah.
And how far to the north is that?
It's actually, there's the next lot over, and it's in between that next lot. And
Oh.
so
Oh,
it's right
that's-
there.
so
It's 100
really
feet,
close.
Oh, fairly
150
close.
feet.
It's
Yeah.
Oh, well,
actually
good, yeah,
something
if
somebody
that's
would
the
walk
case,
down
so-
through right now.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's comparable to ours.
Yeah, not really.
It's not developed.
It's
at
not
this time.
developed,
No.
no.
I mean, okay, so I'll make a motion that we vacate the pedestrian easement between, what's the legal description, lot 1
It's lot 1.
and the adjacent lot? Okay, so it's just on lot 1.
It's just on lot 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I make a motion that we vacate the easement on lot 1.
I second.
It's been first and seconded. Any further discussion?
Jeez, I forgot
I wanna
to
make it-
have
What?
the motion. I forgot to have you do the
Make
motion
it clear
first.
that it's the entire easement instead
Oh.
of just 5 feet of it,
Okay,
Yeah,
It's 25 feet.
yeah, 25
the
feet,
entire
right.
easement.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any new business? Okay, discussion items. We need to schedule a meeting with the Harbor Board to discuss the harbor plan and the comprehensive plan, how it relates to the harbor plan. What time's going to work for everybody?
I won't be here for the full month of February.
I can make any time between now and our next meeting work, so whatever.
I won't be here the first week of February, but I will be able to make a meeting on the second week.
So it sounds like we need to do it before the end of January.
Yeah.
Anytime.
I'm open.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm open the rest of the month, though.
so I guess it's up to, should we kick it over to Harbor and say any
No.
time during the rest of the month, or do we
No, no.
try to set a date? Have they said that they're open?
Glow leaves the 23rd.
She leaves the 23rd, so we got to do it before the 23rd.
So it'd be good if you did it before the 23rd, because she'll be gone through the end of the month.
Okay. So any other conflicts with Harbor?
When is a regular meeting? Do they have one between now?
They just had one.
Oh.
So they actually had one just last week to discuss the plan. They focused mostly on infrastructure, so what I thought would be useful was when you met together to look at waterfront land use, because there's some significant recommendations in the plan about that, and kind of square away whether that makes sense, for harbor development, what kind of recommendations are coming out of the comp plan for waterfront use, so kind of focusing on that.
Like move the fire hall?
There's an idea.
That's in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
1 week from today, we're.
And you'll be here, right, Joe?
You won't, right,
Right.
Liz?
Where's Liz?
Vacation
When are you leaving?
today.
Oh.
When is it now?
Week from today,
It'll be the 19th.
The
It'll be
19th.
Tuesday.
same time? 10 a.m.?
I might have a teleconference that's going to get rescheduled for that day. Since it's scheduled for Monday and I realize it's Martin Luther King Day. So Wednesday, I can, I'm the chair of that committee, so I can make it work. You want to do it at 10?
Tuesday at 10?
Yeah.
Tuesday 19th at 10.
Unless the Harvard board comes back, because none of them can make it.
Hopefully that'll work, because I know
Yeah.
I know it gets tougher for them as we get
Yeah.
further into the month and closer to February. So
Okay. And then the U.S. Forest Service and management plan. Liz, I'm going to let you discuss that for a moment.
I'm just asking whether that's something that you're interested in commenting on, with the understanding that the comments are have to be in by, I think it's February 22nd. So whether that's something that you want to take on or not, and I can put it
Could we,
on the next agenda.
Could we schedule that as it has to be in by February 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk about it at the next meeting. Does everybody want to take a look at that, and then just, if you have any comments, bring it up, and we'll have it as a discussion item at the
I
next
should
meeting?
be looking at that anyway for part of my
Yeah.
regular job.
Yeah.
So
Just want to put
So-
it as discussion item
Or
next.
What do you think we should?
Well, if you
put?
want to do something, then I would make it an action item, but if
Okay,
you
let's put it
think
under an
it's-
action item. Let's put it under an action item, then we can decide if we want to do something about it. If not, then,
That's available online?
It is, and there's also hard copies. Debbie Thompson has hard copies in her
And the
office.
link to it is just the Nikoff Island.
can you send us the link, Liz?
Yeah.
I can send you the link. Yeah.
Okay.
the Forest Service is going to be,
It's not so simple as
it's
like,
a forest plan
Is-
amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I've tried to find Forest Service stuff before and
Yeah,
I've been
it's not-
stymied.
Yeah.
I can probably send you a link and then you can.
I have the link to the
Okay.
page, but as far as like which one is actually
What we're doing.
the borough and which one's the one, you'll have to ferret through their documents and
Okay,
find.
okay, yeah, that'd be helpful.
We'll get you started, but after
Okay.
that, you're on your own. Okay, so I'll put it on the next agenda. So that'll be your regular meeting in February,
Yeah,
so not for the joint meeting.
not for the joint meeting.
Right.
I think that
That'll-
joint meeting's pushing a little bit to have a chance for everybody to go through it and take a look at it, so.
Okay. And just, so you know, there's language both in the comp plan and in the waterfront plan related to waterfront land use, and just, make make a point of looking at both. It's in both of them, I think.
Yeah, because there's discussion about inside Service Area 1, some proposed changes to zoning along the waterfront.
Yeah, and that's-
That is part of this to both facilitate future harbor development and to protect areas that are, are valuable public access. So,
I think too, it offers more opportunity on waterfront in terms of being a little bit more liberal in what you'll be allowed to do there as far as commercial things, as long as it's scaled appropriately for the surrounding area. So I think it's a kind of significant change from how we do things now. So I'd be interested to hear feedback on whether that's a good direction to go or not. So.
My understanding, though, is just because it's recommended in the comp plan, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen.
No, it
I
doesn't.
mean, that's
No.
just, I just want everybody to understand that
No,
just
it doesn't
because
at
it
all.
says in the comp plan that their recommendation is to do this and this and this, it's still got to go through a lot more process.
It does.
I just want
It's just-
everybody to understand that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
absolutely.
a recommendation that
Right.
this,
At this
seems
point
to
in
be a
time, this
good
consultant
idea to
said
go
that,
this
right.
direction, and it's up to going through the whole public hearings and everything else before anything's changed.
Right.
So,
I guess the question is,
You know.
is it a good idea to even
Have it in the comp plan.
to think about it in those terms?
Right,
You know?
yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
all right, well, if there is no further discussion items, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I still move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.